To help us pick out some of the key points and takeaways, we now have the Daily Wrap in association with PayPal. This is where we aim to distill 4 hours of global insights into just 10 minutes of key messages. To help us with this, I am now joined by Money 2020 Editor-in-Chief Sanjeeb Kalita and Marcy Campbell, who's the VP and GM for North America at PayPal. Welcome, Sanjeeb. Welcome, Marcy. Thanks for joining me.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you, Tanaya.
All right. So, Sanjeeb, let's start with your biggest takeaway on day one. What was the major theme that you heard today?
Yeah, well, I guess first of all, let me thank everyone for being in the audience and listening to these great sessions. I found the day amazingly energizing. And, I think if I look back on the day and think about a single theme, it would be superheroes. We heard some amazing stories of overcoming today. We've heard some amazing stories about like how banks, meek-minded bankers, technologists, business people saw the challenge and they said, how can I help? How can I help my community? How can I help the economy? And they stepped up to the challenge. And I think a couple of sessions that really jumped out at me. One was the session with Carlos Torres Villa from BBVA talking about navigating through the crisis. And he highlighted two things, anticipation and coordination. Anticipation in terms of BBVA was already well along the way in the digitization before they saw the pandemic. But so when app logins increased by 20%, they were ready. When they had to go down, set down the branch staff to 11%, they were ready. So I think that was one thing that really jumped out at me. Another session I wanted to highlight was the session by Raja Rajamanar from MasterCard. And he talked about how marketing is being disrupted and how, for example, crisis management. 2 years ago, he asked the CFO of MasterCard to be part of that crisis management function. So it wasn't necessarily just communications, it was cross-functional. It brought everyone in. And similarly, looking at how marketing is being disrupted right now between data and technology, I think that those were some very cogent points.
Well, Sanjay, this is a really fun way of looking at it, and Money 2020 is always well placed right in the lead up to Halloween, so I love how you got us in the spirit for it early. And yeah, now that I think about it, there were several stories and speakers from today that kind of touched on the superhero theme. Marcy, what about you? Did any jump out to you as, superheroes that rose to a challenge?
Yeah, well, first, thanks for having me on the Daily Wrap. It's a real honor. And Sanjeeb, that's a good look for you. But I agree with you. It's an exciting day. There were a number of great sessions, and many of them were really positive examples about how the financial and other institutions overcame adversity during the COVID crisis. I think one of them that stood out for me especially was lessons from an economic first responder. This was an interview with Jill Casilla, who is the CEO of Citizens Bank of Edmond in Oklahoma. Jill is a truly inspirational leader. And when the COVID crisis hit last spring, she took direct action to help her customers and her community. And these folks were economically impacted by the virus. And she asked her small but mighty team of 55 to think creatively and out of the box about how they could offer community support with limited resources. She called them economic first responders, and I think she talked about stitching together whatever tools that they had, called it MacGyvering, so that she could help her customers, motivate them, and compare their work to the bravery of the medical first responders who were out there on the front lines every day fighting the virus. I thought it was really inspirational that her front lines really impacted the small business and individuals by providing a way to get through a gap in time before they got their stimulus checks. And being a small bank, her team became scrappy, and they used social media and formed a partnership with Mark Cuban, and were able to create an overdraft line program for their bank members. I think that this allowed their customers and small businesses to bridge the gap while they were waiting for stimulus checks. I think that was a superhero moment, an example of agility and flexibility. And as she described it, her employees used every tool in their toolbox. I was also impressed today by Kala Gibson from Fifth Third Bank and Sharon Miller, who were in a session called Distributing Billions in Days and addressing the challenges and changes in small business banking, because it showed the criticality of being agile during a crisis. And they spoke about what it took to provide immediate access to the Paycheck Protection Program to small businesses. And Kala and Sharon highlighted the partnership they built with governments and fintechs and the companies to completely rethink about how to operate that and distribute nearly $500 million in a week. This resonated with me because PayPal also rose to the same challenge. We were fortunate to support the program and distribute more than $2 billion in PPP loans, which honestly was no easy fit. So, I think it was also interesting, as Sanjeev said, that both banks reached success by remaining focused and looking at how to accelerate the digitization of their business. I think it really took a superhero effort to get that done quickly and to get people through this crisis.
All right, so Sanjeev, let's go back to you and let's stick with the superheroes. Superheroes have superpowers. They excel at something that others are average at. They develop it and they use that skill to help solve problems. So starting with you, Sanjeev, what superpowers did you see or hear of today?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. And because a lot of times superpowers are things that seem normal or potentially boring, but that are developed to amazing capabilities. And, then no one will ever say that this is a superpower, but the superpower I heard today was finance. Taking care of people's money, being able to be certain that you're able to complete payments across borders when borders are closed, being able to access your funds when you need it. And in many cases, like even facilitating the purchase of PPE so that nurses and first responders can actually protect themselves. So I think that there's that was a superpower today that like really jumped out at me. And I don't think we should. I think we should take a step back and make sure that we recognize that this is in fact, part of the superpowers that we've built as an industry.
Marcy, what superpower jumped out at you, and why is that superpower going to be important over the next 1 to 2 years?
I thought about this while I was looking at the different sessions, and I really saw a common theme of agility. Today's session showed how retailers, banks, and fintech all need to come up to become and remain agile in everything that we do, and that our scrappiness counts when crisis hit. Agility and scrappiness allow us to innovate and come up with new solutions to meet the challenges that come at us. In the last 7 months, they've been a roller coaster, and we all know that it's not over. So we need to stay agile, flexible, and scrappy. And I think that's crucial. We need to be agile in building new solutions, flexible with our employees, and scrappy with our customers so we can meet their needs.
All right. We are coming up on the end of the session. Many superheroes have a catchphrase like Superman with up, up, and away. What would your catchphrase for the day be, Marcy?
I don't know if it's a superhero mantra, but I heard it just in the last session, and that was never let a good crisis go to waste.
I believe that.
Yeah, I believe that no one enjoys a crisis, and we're going through many tough situations, but if we remain positive, there are many opportunities that can be born on the other side. At PayPal, I have a CEO who told me she's runs an online retailer business, that 2020 was her Super Bowl moment. And this was a way for her to get into the big leagues, compete with in-store providers, and she used the crisis to reimagine her business. And I think a lot of us can do that as we move forward.
All right, Sanjeev?
That's going to be a tough one to beat, Marcy. But I think if I have to come up with something, I'd say action at a distance, because we are not physically together right now. We're not physically near our customers, but we have to drive tremendous action. And so I would say action at a distance.
Oh, that's great.
All right. Well, thank you, Sanjeev. Thank you, Marcy.